There's something in your life right now that you can't see. You've been careful, prudent even, but the money you expected to flow isn't flowing, and you wonder if you missed something. Maybe you did. By the time we're done, I want you to understand 3 things you're doing quietly, without noticing, that are keeping good things from you. And none of them are what the prosperity preachers tell you. Let me show you. The first habit is this. You're holding back from giving, and you think it's prudence. A woman came to me after service, tears in her eyes. She'd tithed faithfully for 40 years, but after her husband passed, she stopped. I need it more than the church does, she said. She wasn't being selfish. She was being scared, and I understood her completely. But what she said next is what stayed with me. I stopped because I started wondering if God would actually come through. That question, whether God comes through, that's where the real fight is. In Malachi chapter 3, verses 8 through 10, God speaks through the prophet. Will man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, if I will not open the windows of heaven for you. Now let me be clear. That text does not say, give money and get 100 back. It says, withholding is a form of robbing God. Because giving is how you say what you actually believe about who owns it all. That's why God says, test me. It's a test of your trust, not a financial transaction. Now the second habit is quieter than the first, and more dangerous. You've started chasing wealth as your security, and you don't even realize it. Now, before I go further, being careful with money isn't the problem. Saving for the future isn't the problem. The problem starts when the savings become your trust, when the money becomes what you lean on. Most people trapped in this don't look greedy. They look cautious. But watch what happens inside them when the market shifts, when the account dips. There's a particular kind of fear that shows up, because they're depending on the balance, not God. In Proverbs chapter 23, verses 4 and 5, do not toil to be rich. Be wise enough to restrain yourself. When your eyes light on it, it is gone. For suddenly it sprouts wings, like an eagle flying away. When your eyes light on it, that's the moment you think you've got a handle on it, and then it's gone. Wealth has wings. In Luke chapter 12, Jesus tells a story about a wealthy landowner. His harvest was great. He said, "Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry." And God said to him, "Fool, this night your soul is required of you. So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God." Rich toward God. That's the contrast. You've lived long enough to see this pattern play out. Maybe not a multi-million-dollar harvest, but a savings account wiped out by a medical bill, a pension that didn't last, a family member who lost everything in a downturn. You know, in your bones, that wealth has wings. Let me say something that may sound contradictory, but it's not. You can be careful with money and still not be attached to it. You can plan wisely and still hold it loosely. The difference shows up in the anxiety. When the market drops, the person trusting God grieves but doesn't fall apart. The person treating savings as security has something else break inside them, something the spreadsheet can't fix. In Luke chapter 12, verse 31, Jesus says, "Seek the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you." Seek the kingdom. Not your 401k, not your cushion, not your portfolio. Seek the kingdom, and those things get added, not as a guarantee of wealth, as the natural overflow of a life pointed in the right direction. And that leads me to the third habit, the one I see more than any other. You're treating what you've been given as if it's yours to keep. This one creeps in quietly. It's the habit of seeing your savings, your home, your social security check, as something you own outright, rather than something you've been entrusted with. I'm thinking of a man in his late 70s who came to see me, careful his whole life, saved, invested, never reckless. But he said something that stopped me. "I've been so careful because I've been afraid to really let it go." $500,000 in savings, and he hadn't given any of it away in 30 years. Not because he was greedy, because he didn't see the shift coming from steward to hoarder. That widow in Mark chapter 12, what made her gift remarkable wasn't the amount, it was the posture. She gave from her poverty. She understood something the rich contributors didn't. The money was never hers to keep. It was something to pass through. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 27. Whoever gives to the poor will not want, but he who hides his eyes will get many a curse. That's not God cursing you for being practical. That's the natural consequence of a closed hand. A closed hand keeps things out as much as it keeps things in. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 17 through 19. Paul writes to the rich in this age, "Charge them not to put their hope in the uncertainty of riches, but in God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy." They are to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, that they may take hold of that which is truly life. That's the invitation. Not to get rid of your money, but to change what you're hoping in. You can be careful and still be free. But freedom requires a shift in who you see as the owner. Every dollar in your account came from somewhere. You earned some, but the ability to earn it, the health, the opportunities, those came from somewhere else. Treating what you have as something held on behalf of the one who gave it changes everything. Now let me bring this home to the person watching right now. If you're sitting there with a knot in your stomach, one of these 3 habits is almost certainly part of what's making it tighter. Not because you're doing something terribly wrong, but because somewhere along the way, you started gripping instead of flowing. Maybe you stopped giving because fear got bigger than trust. Maybe you started chasing a number that would finally make you feel safe. Maybe you've been sitting on something God's been asking you to release, and you've called it prudence. Here's what you can actually do with this. Not a 5-step plan, not a strategy. One thing. This week, pick one area where you've been holding tight. One thing. Maybe it's the tithe you stopped giving. Maybe it's something someone needs that you've been sitting on. Or maybe it's simply sitting down and honestly naming to God and yourself that what you have came from Him. Then do it. Give it. Release it. Not because you've calculated a return, because practicing trust is the only thing that relieves that knot. Malachi 3:10. Put me to the test. That's not a preacher's phrase. That's God speaking. He's asking you to see for yourself whether holding tight has kept you safe or kept something from you. You might be surprised at what happens when you open your hands. If anything today stirred something in you, I'd be glad to have you here. You can subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. But honestly, the only thing I want for you is what you just heard. The peace you've been looking for. The provision you've been asking for. The freedom from that quiet worry that never quite leaves. It's been waiting for you to do one terribly hard thing. Open your hands. He's been right there the whole time.